Revealed, how one amazing woman unexpectedly returned $950 million, transforming lives forever. Emily Harper stood in her dimly lit kitchen, staring at the letter on the table, as disbelief rippled through her. Almost $1 billion, untouched wealth belonging to her from a distant family member she barely knew existed. The bustling sounds of Maplewood outside faded as her own heartbeat filled the silence. How had this happened? Freedom, luxury, the promise of a life vastly different from the narrow purpose she lived for, all while nurturing her lively son, Jake. But as the thrill of this extraordinary revelation washed over her, so did an undercurrent of tension. How could she, a simple nurse devoted to medical care and her community, accept money from a world she often resented? Her days in the hospital were spent battling the system that exploited her patients, and now, suddenly, she could be the very thing she had fought against, a symbol of wealth that could make her a stranger in her hometown. With every burst of excitement, confusion clung to her like a shadow. Pressure tightened around her chest, friends' faces flashed in her mind, etched with worry. They spoke of her predicament, whispering the words she dreaded, one of them. Success and affluence had a way of erasing the human experience, replacing empathy with indifference. Could she bear being perceived this way by those she cared for most? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake's laughter drew her back from the edge of her thoughts. The sound of his carefree spirit was a balm amid her anxiety. He knew nothing of wealth and social strata. To him, the world was a canvas of imagination filled with superheroes and adventure. She couldn't imagine telling him the truth, of how this newfound inheritance could reshape their lives so drastically that it might pull them apart. What if having it changed him too? As she wandered through their cramped living room, the faded wallpaper a testament to years of struggle, all she could envision was a way out for both of them: a better school for Jake, a stable house, a life free of the burdens she carried. But nestled in that fantasy was a gnawing fear. A fundamental shift was looming, and she sensed the resistance from the very people she sought to uplift. Her life had become a precarious balance of hope and dread, and the pull of the money threatened to throw everything into disarray. With sleepless nights drawing her thoughts deeper into chaos, doubt gnawed at her resolve. Could she rise above the expectations and silence the whispers of disdain? In the dim light, a realization blossomed. She had the chance not to escape, but to fight for her community. Yet, the fear of backlash, being seen as a betrayer, loomed large like a dark cloud above her courage. Emily stared blankly at the trust fund letter once more. Circling around her mind was a singular thought: the lives that could change, the burdens that could lift, but only if she walked a path she had yet to decide. Each beat of her heart screamed for clarity, an answer to whether she'd have the strength to embrace both her ambitions and her roots. As a newspaper began running an exposé on the mysterious benefactor, whispers about Emily began to stir, and the anxiety that colored her once peaceful evenings intensified. Now the question remained: as the town readied itself for judgment, would she overcome the obstacles, or would her fear root her back, forever imprisoned by the chains of expectation? The sun hung low in the sky, casting elongated shadows across Emily's south suburban street. She stood at the threshold of her home, grappling with a weight her heart could barely bear. The world around her thrummed with life, children laughing and playing in the distance, yet isolation wrapped around her like a heavy cloak. She could practically feel the whispers of the town swirling in the air, echoing her own insecurities in a cacophony of doubt. Jake's innocent enthusiasm offered a fleeting respite, but even his laughter couldn't drown out the incessant clamor of her mind. She could indulge in fantasies of the future: a new home outfitted with a yard, perhaps even a dog, but with each passing day, those dreams felt increasingly tainted. Could she truly justify embracing such wealth while the community she cherished remained mired in mediocrity? On her way to work the next morning, the familiar sights of Maplewood turned into a gauntlet of reminders: the hospital where she spent countless hours, the grocery store where she knew everyone's name, and the playground where Jake swung blissfully. Each stop beckoned her to reflect on what it meant to be part of this tight-knit community. The weight of her inheritance felt like a chasm opening between her and the others, threatening to consume her connection to the values she held dear. As her shift began, Emily stepped into the ward to the usual bustle of patients and staff. Yet, today there was a different kind of urgency in the air, one that unsettled her. It was as if whispers had transformed into glances, laden with a mix of admiration and skepticism. Patients responded to her with gratitude, but there were questions brewing, the unspoken concern that echoed her own. Suddenly, her ability to empathize, to connect to their struggles, seemed compromised. Could she still be the same person they relied on, or was she about to become a figure of envy or disdain? During a break, she found solace in the quiet room. Her phone buzzed incessantly, drawing her attention to social media channels alive with speculation about the identity of the newfound millionaire. Every post reminded her of the looming divide. Suddenly, it wasn't just her that was affected, but her entire identity was on display. As she scrolled through the comments, each one felt like a judgment, not against her wealth, but against the very core of who she was, against every choice she had made. Determined to overcome the trepidation, Emily resolved to confront the issue head-on. If she was to navigate this newfound landscape, she needed to articulate her purpose. Gathering her courage, she organized a town meeting at the community center, hoping to foster an open dialogue about her inheritance. Could she reshape the narrative, positioning herself not as a stranger but as an ally? With the date set for the meeting, anxiety fueled a torrent of thoughts. How would her peers react? What questions would they ask? Would they see her as a beacon of hope or a betrayal of their shared struggles? As the meeting approached, her breaths became shorter. Yet, beneath the fear lay a burgeoning sense of resolve. Emily believed there was an opportunity to redefine her path, one where she could use this wealth to uplift rather than shun her roots. But as she stepped into her kitchen that night, anxiety morphed into determination. She gathered community input for the meeting, painstakingly preparing her words to initiate a dialogue that could bridge the growing divide. The moment felt pivotal. But as she placed the materials on the table, a notification flashed on her phone. A new article had been published, spotlighting her as a controversial heiress. The stakes had just amplified, and the looming question stung with urgency. How far was she willing to go to assure she would be recognized for who she was, and not just perceived as one of them? Emily sat in her kitchen, the glow of the laptop screen illuminating her features as she stared unblinkingly at the article. The title itself felt like a stake driven into her heart, revealed, "How One Amazing Woman Unexpectedly Returned $950 million, Transforming Lives Forever." The irony twisted sharply. When had she even considered returning the money? Angela would relate the sensational headline back to a story, twisting her purpose into a spectacle for public consumption. Was this what they wanted? An idealization of the selfless heiress? Emily pushed her chair back, the sound grating against her growing frustration. This was not how she envisioned introducing herself to her community. She had dreamt of being the embodiment of their shared struggles, uplifting the lives of those around her, not becoming a figure of overwhelming speculation, rich and untouchable. With each word she typed, fear gnawed within her. Did people see her as a stay-at-home heiress conspiring to make things better, or truly as a person capable of genuine change? She put down her phone, shaking off the thoughts that wrapped around her. She needed to strategize, not only for the meeting but also for who she would evolve into with this increased scrutiny. Her decision to hold the meeting felt like a turning point, a chance to wrestle control back from something that felt actively hostile. There was work to be done. She began drafting her speech, knowing that vulnerability could be her greatest strength. It wouldn't be enough to simply state her intentions, she had to usher them into her world of possibilities. What could a well-structured plan look like? After an evening of introspection, her outline began to take shape, a core statement for what was true about her: I am still me. This wealth does not define who I am. With that, she sketched out engaging ways to merge her newfound resources with the community's needs. She would propose specific initiatives centered on enhancing local education and supporting small businesses. As she wrote, the anxiety began to ebb in favor of a burgeoning clarity. Each point distilled her vision, creating a framework that revealed not only her growth but her unwavering commitment to her roots. By midnight, a deep-seated determination replaced the residual guilt. She visualized her peers, their condescending looks morphing into curiosity. She could almost hear their questions, and instead of cowering from them, she would meet each inquiry with a measured confidence. If she could show that her newfound wealth birthed a profound willingness to foster change rather than entitlement, perhaps she could become a bridge to opportunity, not a wall of envy. Though each moment leading up to the meeting loomed heavy with uncertainty, Emily embraced the growing sense of purpose that solidified within her. As the hour drew closer, she realized she was stepping not only into a discussion about her wealth but into a renewed commitment to herself, the woman behind the inheritance. The sun rose on the day of the meeting, casting a warm glow that swallowed her shadow momentarily. With notes in hand, she stepped outside, determined to redefine the narrative surrounding her identity. Perhaps her intention to uplift could turn the tide of judgment into a wave of coalition building. But amid the excitement of new possibilities, another notification interrupted her thoughts. A private message from an anonymous account revealed fabricated rumors about her past, igniting fresh doubts and urgent questions. Who was truly crafting her story? The meeting started in mere hours, and Emily faced an unexpected truth. She was about to fight for not only her future but for the ownership of her narrative. The moment to confront not just the community, but the world that was so enamored with her money, had arrived. Would she stand tall in the face of adversity, or would the whispers of doubt overwhelm her resolve? Emily stood frozen for a moment, her heart racing against a tide of uncertainty. The anonymous message prickled at her skin, conjuring an image of bitter skeptics and cynical peers casting doubt on her intentions. What had they said? What narrative would they weave about her now? It felt like the world was busy creating a fiction she wasn't ready to confront. Desperation twisted in her gut, pushing her toward her phone. Focus on what you can control, she reminded herself silently, anchoring her spiraling thoughts. This moment was pivotal, not just for how others perceived her but for who she was determined to become. The meeting awaited her, not an audience hungry for gossip, the community of which she had always been a part. Taking a deep breath, Emily knotted her fingers around her notes, feeling the outlines of her initiatives mapping out a future that didn't belong to rumor but to reality. They were simple, yet profound ideas aimed at harnessing local talent and increasing educational resources. Instead of cowering before the voices that attempted to reshape her, she would rise to meet them head-on. Arriving at the community hall, she felt the sunlight break through the clouds above, illuminating the space. Familiar faces mingled, whispers tracing through the crowd, occasionally glancing at her as if she was a pariah stepping into the light. Her palms grew slick against her paper, yet she forced her feet to carry her forward, welcoming the challenge. A local journalist leaned against the wall, casual yet observant. Emily caught the glint of a camera, the unsettling notion that her every move would be scrutinized. She could either hide or be the narrative she wished to project. Gritting her teeth, she moved to the front of the room. This was her chance not only to express her vision but to reclaim her story. Taking the stage, she cleared her throat, feeling the weight of expectation. "Thank you for being here today," she began, the collective gaze sharpening. "I stand before you not just as a woman who has inherited wealth but as someone who understands the stakes, who knows the struggles faced by our community." As she dove into her speech, the words flowed, each point striking a bold chord. She spoke candidly of her aspirations to uplift local education and support entrepreneurs, framing her wealth as a tool for empowerment rather than a source of envy. Her passion pulsated through her voice, and for the first time, doubt was overshadowed by the electrifying connection she felt with the audience. But no sooner had she gained traction than she noticed a familiar face in the crowd: Angela, arms crossed, her expression rife with skepticism. Every glance from her felt like a challenge, a reminder of the past that Emily was determined to reshape. The moment the speech concluded, Angela shifted her weight, the tension thick as she approached the podium, eyes gleaming with mischief. "Interesting speech, Emily," Angela began, her tone wrapped in sarcasm. "But don't you think you're overestimating how the community sees you? After all, you're still that heiress with a trust fund, aren't you?" Gasps circled the room, and Emily's heart lurched. The confrontation had come sooner than she imagined. In that instant, she realized this wasn't merely about her wealth but a deeper battle for authenticity. She had to respond not just with words, but with the strength she decultivated within herself. Yes, Emily replied, her voice steady, unwavering. I have wealth, but I also bear the responsibility to use it wisely. I want to turn that judgment into an opportunity for dialogue. We can collaborate, not compete. Angela's eyes narrowed, but before she could retort, the crowd buzzed with curiosity. Emily felt the tide shifting ever so slightly. Perhaps this was a step towards earning their respect. But as she finished speaking, she realized the war had just begun, and she now stood at the forefront, ready to steer her narrative or risk letting others dictate her identity. Was she brave enough to continue? Only time would tell if she could inspire true change or remain mired in the shadows of others' expectations. And as Emily stepped into this uncharted territory, another message pinged on her phone, an ominous warning that made her blood run cold. Would she be ready for what this bold stand might unleash? Emily's fingers trembled as she pocketed her phone, the enigmatic notification clamoring for her attention. The room buzzed with voices, familiar yet distant, as adrenaline coursed through her. What awaited in that message felt like a riptide threatening to drag her under, but she couldn't afford to dwell on fear. She had to reclaim the narrative she had started shaping moments ago. Emily. Are you all right? A fervent voice broke through her thoughts. It was James, an old friend and local entrepreneur, his brow lined with concern. A fragment of her past, one not tainted by judgment, but a connection based on shared dreams of a prosperous community. Yes, I'm fine, she managed, pushing down the brewing storm of anxiety. I just need to find my footing. She took a deep breath, glancing around the room, where skepticism battled hope in every gaze. Rising to meet him, she knew her journey had gained momentum, but she was acutely aware that Angela's words would echo in the minds of those who had known her only as the trust fund girl. Your message resonated, James continued, warmth emanating from his presence. But you need tangible plans. How do you intend to implement such bold visions? The sincerity in his question fueled her resolve. She needed to shift the narrative, not just through words but with actionable strategies. We can launch workshops for local entrepreneurs, provide mentorship in various sectors: education, health, and technology, she suggested, her voice gaining strength with each idea that surfaced. But first, I need to gather more support. I need to bring together people who believe in this change. James nodded in approval, and a glimmer of confidence ignited within Emily. The crowd wasn't just a collection of individual perceptions, it was a web of potential partnerships waiting to be spun. I'll set up smaller meetings, gather a committee. Together, we can create a roadmap that reflects our community's real needs. She determined to forge her path, step by step. However, the undercurrent of scrutiny remained, and as the conversations around her continued, doubts circled like sharks, each whisper laden with skepticism. It gnawed at the corners of her mind, but she quelled it with calculated breaths, a strategic choice to shift her focus inward. Suddenly, a new message illuminated her screen. Another notification? Or perhaps an escalation of the apprehension she was already wrestling with? Her heart quickened as she stepped away from James, the surrounding voices fading, and she opened the message. The words on the screen were jarring, an accusation that struck far deeper than her previous confrontation. It named her initiatives a facade, proposing that she was a mere charlatan disguised as a visionary. Compounding her confusion was the sender's identity, a figure from her past, someone she once considered an ally. The emotion swelled a pang of betrayal, an echo of the doubts she fought so hard against. Were her words and intentions being twisted beneath the microscope of public scrutiny? Decisions loomed heavy on her shoulders. This was not only about responding to a single confrontation, it spiraled into a broader question of whether she truly deserved to lead. Could she withstand the waves of doubt relentlessly crashing around her? She could feel the community pulling her, demanding proof of authenticity. With every intention of bringing about change now tethered to her past, the battle lines had solidified. Gritting her teeth, she answered the message with steely resolve. Let them talk. I will show them who I really am. But the real challenge lay ahead. Would her resolve hold against the faceless critiques? Was she prepared to unveil her true self and embrace the weight of leadership? As Emily stepped back into the crowd, her heart pounded with determination. The shifting tides of public perception may have buffeted her confidence, but what the future held remained uncertain. Alongside the spiraling expectations, one single truth loomed: she had to confront her past before she could redefine her present. And just as her thoughts settled into a steely determination, another buzzing notification taunted her: a call from an unexpected ally whose true motives remained a mystery. What was this new twist in her narrative? Emily's heart raced as she stared at the caller ID. It was Rachel, a former confidant whose silence had stretched over the years like an unending winter. Once, they had spent countless late nights scheming and dreaming about changing their corner of the world, yet Rachel's absence in her life was a reminder of how quickly alliances could fracture. She hesitated, torn between curiosity and trepidation, before finally answering. "Rachel?" "Emily." Rachel's voice was calm, yet laced with an electric current that made Emily lean in. "I saw your message. I wanted to talk." The candidness of her former friend was foreign, shifting the atmosphere palpable enough to cut the tension coiling in Emily's stomach. "Okay, it's about the accusation," Rachel interjected, cutting through Emily's attempts at explanation. "I don't think it's just noise. I believe your integrity is being questioned for a reason." The statement clipped Emily's breath. Symptoms of betrayal resurfaced, a rogue wave crashing against her resolve. "What do you mean?" "Too many are watching your every move. There are motives beneath it all, people who wish to undermine your initiatives. You're perceived as a threat." Emily paced, the buzz of conversation around her faded into a blur. Each word Rachel said forced her to reconstruct the narrative she had envisioned. She had fostered motivation through her own ideas but was now forcing herself to question their merit in the harsh light of scrutiny. The compliments about her initiative could dissolve into mere endorsements of a facade, an image painstakingly curated yet fragile. Who was she without those fascinating contours thrust upon her by an audience who remained skeptical? "I don't know how to navigate this," Emily admitted, her vulnerability an unanticipated companion as she spoke. "I'm losing faith in my ability to lead this change." "Don't underestimate yourself. You are more than the whispers. You have to show them," Rachel urged, her voice rising slightly. "Your journey is as much about proving yourself to you as it is to them. What do you really want to achieve?" The inquiry hung in the air like a spark. Emily considered for a moment, battling with her internal demons. She recalled the workshops she envisioned and the mentorship she desired to create. Those were her truths. Yet the picture began to reveal shadows that frightened her. Was it self-serving ambition, or genuine service to a community? She hadn't taken time to explore what those terms truly meant outside of superficial support. "I want to create something real," she finally declared, her voice firmer. "Something tangible that can lift people, not just from the basement of their fears but into a new belief. I want them to trust me again, to trust in what I stand for." Rachel's silence radiated through the phone, and Emily could almost hear her nodding in approval from a distance. "Then start with authenticity. Seek out those who are aware of your past and use it not as a weakness, but as an asset. Everyone has wounds. Show yours and let them see your journey." The message crystallized. The truth of her experiences had to align with the leader she wanted to become. That vulnerability she shied away from could, in fact, serve as a bridge to humanity, not an anchor of embarrassment. She needed to own her past, acknowledge the girl who had once walked in affluent circles, and instead of shunning it, show how those scars strengthened her resolve. "Thanks, Rachel. I think you're right. I have to be more open." The call ended, leaving Emily with a renewed purpose lighting a fire in her chest. She glanced at her phone, still buzzing with the world outside, ready to dive into her plans, infused with a sense of resolution. Deep down, she felt curious about the forces behind the accusations. Who was orchestrating this symphony of doubt? She fought against the instinct to retreat, transforming it into the fuel she needed to push forward. Raising her chin, she stepped back into the crowd, her fervor igniting a simmering determination. The questions of her worth still lingered. But they now veered toward discovery rather than despair. A figure stepped toward her at that moment, a face she didn't expect to see. Angela, eyes sharp, approached with purpose. The time had come to face the critic standing at her door. What information lay hidden behind the veneer of animosity? And would it fracture her transformation or fortify it? Emily's breath caught in her throat as Angela drew nearer, her sharp gaze like a blade pressed against the vulnerable edges of her newfound ambition. The noise of the bustling environment faded, each step Angela took feeling weighty, consequential. What drove Angela to confront her now? Surely, this wasn't just a coincidence. Emily, Angela began, her voice even yet layered with an undercurrent of disdain. I have to hand it to you. You're quite resilient, aren't you? Clearly, you've managed to slip back into the role of the hero, despite all the chaos. Resentment flickered within Emily, the sting of Angela's words forcing her to confront the animosity that had simmered beneath their previous exchanges. This wasn't just about the accusations that had cast shadows over her work, it was personal. I'm not here to play a victim or to be your target, Emily replied, her tone firm yet steady. What I'm doing matters, whether you acknowledge it or not. Angela crossed her arms, a skeptical smirk hovering on her lips. Matters to whom? Those who you're trying to impress? Or to the very people who question your motives? The challenge hung like a weight between them, compelling Emily to articulate her truth. It matters to me, she asserted. I've reevaluated what it means to lead, and I'm committed to building something real. I want to foster trust, not just within the people I work with, but also within myself. The sincerity in Emily's voice surprised her. She had articulated an intention she had wavered on, shrouded in doubt for too long. As much as Angela's skepticism threatened to derail her resolve, it also ignited an unexpected force within her, a clear awareness of her purpose. Trust is earned, Emily, Angela said, tilting her head slightly. If you think you can just reshape your narrative, think again. You're going to need more than a heartfelt speech to win people over. Emily felt the weight of Angela's critique. It pierced through every self-doubt she had harbored. But it also planted a seed of determination, making her recoil from weakness and lean into strategy. Then maybe that's where you come in, she replied, a spark igniting her tone, her conflict morphing into an opportunity for growth. You've always had a knack for polarizing opinions. Perhaps you could help me understand who these critics are, the ones trying to dismantle what I've built. Angela's eyebrows raised in surprise as if she hadn't expected this turn. You're asking for my help? Only if you're willing to give it, Emily replied, her voice steadying as the gravity of her own ambitions settled within her. I need allies who can confront the truth with me, not just wield judgment from a distance. Angela studied her for a moment, the skepticism twisting into intrigue. You want to confront this head-on? You're looking for transparency? Yes, and it starts with me, Emily said, her conviction hardening. I can't strengthen my position without first understanding the foundation who's questioning me, what their motives are, and how I can transform criticism into constructive dialogue. The tension shifted the moment Angela nodded thoughtfully, a hint of appreciation breaking through her veneer. All right then, Emily. But remember, the path toward rebuilding trust isn't just about proving others wrong. It means accepting your flaws, and sometimes making sacrifices that won't benefit you directly. As they stood there, the possibilities unfurled before Emily like a map strewn with complexities and challenges, yet brimming with potential. Sharing her vulnerabilities would not be a weakness, it was the first deliberate step in realigning her identity with her aspirations. Yet, in that moment of growing clarity, an unsettling thought niggled at the back of her mind. Who would support her once they learned about her past? The baggage she carried could easily derail her intentions. Can I really trust you, Angela? Emily asked, her voice wavering just slightly. Only time will tell, Angela shrugged, leaving Emily puzzling over her own intersecting paths of resilience and fragility. The need for transparency in her life had never been more pressing. She knew she had to navigate potential landmines carefully. As their conversation lingered in the air, Emily faced the dawning realization that her journey was only beginning. Could she redefine herself while cordoning off the darkness of her past? And in doing so, would Angela become the bridge or the barrier she hadn't anticipated? With renewed focus, Emily prepared to make strategic moves. But looming questions remained. What lingering shadows from the past threatened her future, and how far was she willing to delve into the depths of her own history for redemption? With Angela's sardonic words hanging in the air, Emily felt the weight of a challenge that had morphed into a complex undertaking. She had thought she understood her ambition, yet it now seemed intricately tangled with her vulnerabilities. As they parted ways, she stepped into the bustling street. A world of noise flooded her senses, yet her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, strategies, fears, aspirations. She didn't want to be just another story of failure turned success, or yet another name buried under the weight of past mistakes. What did it mean to earn trust? The thought looped in her mind like a persistent metronome. Emily headed to her favorite coffee shop, a small, unassuming place nestled between towering glass buildings that seemed to swallow any sense of identity. Here, she usually found solace and clarity. Settling into her usual corner seat, she pulled out her notebook and opened to a fresh page, the blank space pulsating with potential. What lay ahead demanded more than just energy. It required deep reflection and acute self-awareness. She penned the word strategy for rebuilding trust at the top, letting each letter crystallize her intent. Beneath it, she drafted segments: identify doubt, invite dialogue, acknowledge flaws, find alliances. Each point created an outline of not just recovery, but of growth. Before Emily could fully dive into theoretical strategies, her stomach tightened with apprehension. The past lingered uninvited, haunting her thoughts. The mistakes she had made were still frosty shadows in the back of her mind, unrelenting reminders of the weaknesses she sought to overcome. If there were critics lurking in the shadows, wouldn't they use those same mistakes to undermine her effort? Rubbing her temples, she decided that confronting her history was as crucial as the strategies on her page. What about her upbringing? The chaos of broken promises from mentors who let her down and the whispering doubts of peers always second-guessing her motives. She closed her eyes for a moment, envisioning how to transform those emotions. What if they became active rationales for her drive instead? Accepting the past, rather than hiding from it, could become an asset. But would it really be enough to inspire trust in others? The fear of rejection skittered through her mind, almost tangible. The notion of being vulnerable flared a singular desire within her to be authentic, even if that meant exposing those painful aspects. The impatient tapping of fingers on tables around her broke her trance, and with a deep intake of breath, she grasped her pen tighter. She had to reframe her narrative. She wanted to be a leader who didn't just preach but lived through her realities and challenges. Each vulnerability was a point in her journey, a roadmap toward an individuality that the world could recognize and trust. With newfound determination, she created a timeline on the page, drafting key experiences where she could articulate her growth. Each incident could serve as a lesson to others, each setback had made her stronger, a reminder of her steadfastness. As she articulated her history, her heart raced not with fear but with fierce empowerment. This past could rise as an emblem of change. Leaving the coffee shop, Emily felt an unfamiliar lightness. She was shedding layers of doubt, each step grounding her in a path she was beginning to forge. Then her phone buzzed violently, snapping her out of her thoughts. The message flashed: meeting with the board tomorrow. Be prepared to discuss your vision. An ambivalence stirred within her. This would be the first time she would face the board alone since the chaos erupted. Would they appreciate her newfound perspective, or would they drag her back into an abyss of harsh scrutiny? The stakes loomed larger than before. Facing the board meant revealing her redefined self, all while teetering on the edge of judgment. As she dug her heels deeper into her resolve, another unsettling thought invaded her mind. If she stood before them, exposed her truths, and they still didn't listen, would she still be able to rebuild everything she had hoped for? Determined, Emily decided she needed to conceptualize her vision clearly before that meeting. If trust mattered, clarity and purpose was non-negotiable. The time to act had come. She would approach that meeting deliberately, armed not only with her strategic proposals but with an unfiltered narrative that reflected her authentic self. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, casting shadows on her journey, one possibility loomed large. What if the confrontation with the board became the crucible where she forged her new legacy? The weight of that moment tightened around her, an exhilarating blend of anxiety and anticipation. Far from the finished narrative, she was still stumbling through the forest of her uncertainties, but she now held the compass of her emerging identity, and the first summit was just around the corner. What awaited her there would challenge everything she thought she knew about leadership and trust. Would she emerge as the leader she aspired to be, or would the past claw its way back to define her once again? As dawn broke, Emily found herself pacing the small confines of her apartment, rattled by the gravity of the impending board meeting. The light filtering through the window barely softened the jagged edges of her anxiety. Each tick of the clock infused her thoughts with a greater rush of urgency. Would she convey her vision effectively? Would they perceive the commitment behind her words, or simply the remnants of her past? The morning ritual of brewing coffee, usually a moment of tranquility, felt fraught with pressure. She concentrated on the steady drip of black liquid into the pot, imagining that each droplet was a measure of her resolve consolidating. This meeting wasn't merely a presentation of her ideas, it was an exhibition of her growth. The possibility of failure now held more stakes than ever before. The chance to reshape her identity hung delicately in the balance. Her notebook lay open on the dining table, filled with key phrases and strategies. Yet, as she surveyed the scrawled pages, they began to morph before her focused gaze. Every bullet point she had meticulously crafted now felt like a declaration of her scars. Perhaps her history could transform from a burden into a source of inspiration. Realizing this, she decided she wouldn't just articulate her objectives, she wanted her message to resonate on a deeper level. It needed authenticity. Invite dialogue, she whispered to herself, recalling her own notes. Yes, she had to engage them, not just present information. The board should not be distant evaluators, but partners in understanding her new direction. She envisioned them as individuals, colleagues who faced challenges themselves. This mindset shift was crucial. But doubt still cheated its way into her conscious thoughts. Did she truly have a compelling vision, or was she merely attempting to weave threads of desperation into fabric? Confronting this nagging uncertainty, Emily closed her eyes to center herself. For a moment, the pulsating question of self-worth receded, allowing space for clarity. She was standing at the threshold of something monumental. If she faltered now, would it cause her to retreat into old, detrimental habits? Harnessing her breath, she stood straighter, picturing herself walking into that boardroom, breathing life into her vision. This galvanized her. She would not just disclose plans but rather stay grounded in her story. A flash of recollection ignited her resolve. It was her stubbornness during bouts of failure as a young adult that had shaped her determination. Growth, not perfection, she reminded herself. With hours to spare, Emily prepared with renewed vigor. She memorized key points from her structured strategy, then worked on cultivating a seamless narrative arc that interlaced her professional and personal experiences. Back when she craved affirmation, she believed leadership meant projecting an image of flawless success. Now, however, she recognized that vulnerability could indeed forge connections. Each setback she shared could become a tributary of strength, a wellspring for trust and understanding. The moment of truth nipped at her heels as she donned a fitted blazer and armor against doubt. She caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. The reflection appeared steadied by purpose rather than masked with trepidation. Instead of merely a contender, she was evolving into a participant ready to reshape the dialogue rather than absorbing it flawlessly. As she left her apartment, a sudden chill crept up her spine, a reminder of the unpredictability that awaited her in the meeting. Every interaction could veer toward acceptance or rejection. Imagining their expressions, the scrutiny of their gazes now transformed into a canvas upon which she could paint her journey. Sharp, yet oddly exhilarating, each step toward the boardroom encapsulated her burgeoning identity. It was an expedition into the unknown where past and future converged. Would they listen? Would her story resonate? Each question blended into her mantra. It was time to carve her own narrative. As she approached the door, she pulled it open with a steadying breath, ready to make her mark. Regaining her composure, she crossed the threshold. But before she could settle into her seat, an unanticipated sound halted her. Behind her, the unmistakable echo of whispers filled the air. What were they discussing? Was it her, or an issue that sparked outrage across the board? The threshold between her aspirations and the uncertain reality ahead drew long, unfamiliar shadows as she prepared to confront the truths waiting in that room. Emily stepped into the boardroom, her heartbeat synchronizing with the murmur of apprehensive voices. She could feel the scrutiny of their gazes, each member sizing her up as if waiting for any sign of inadequacy. Yet, a profound change had overtaken her. She was no longer the hesitant woman uncertain about her place in the world. Instead, she emerged as a leader resolved to meld her past with her ambitions. As she took her seat, Emily recalled her strategy, intricately blending her experience with her vision for community enhancement. The proposals, filled with actionable elements crafted from hours of reflection, shimmered in her mind. This was the moment that would define her relations not just as an heiress, but as a catalyst for change. "Thank you for being here today," she began, voice steady and resonant, rejecting the lingering self-doubt that had haunted her in earlier days. "I stand before you not merely as someone who has inherited wealth, but as a person determined to leverage that wealth to empower ourselves, our community, and our future." Her opening statement invoked a surprising silence, as the members exchanged glances. The moment was palpable, she could feel anticipation electrifying the air between them. "I've created a plan that focuses on educational initiatives, mentorship opportunities, and collective entrepreneurship designed to elevate our community and redefine its economic landscape," Emily continued, her heart racing with excitement rather than fear as ideas poured out. She detailed her vision with clarity and conviction, addressing each initiative thoughtfully. Improved educational facilities, partnerships with local businesses, workshops, and mentorship programs. She could see each project's importance illuminated in the eager eyes of her peers. With every word, she demonstrated not just understanding but a commitment to the shared vision, one that fostered trust as the foundation of her legacy. As Emily spoke, she remained vigilant against the questions that continued to buzz in the atmosphere. However, aware of lurking skepticism, she emphasized vulnerability. "As I present these ideas, it's important that I acknowledge my past," she said, pausing to survey their expressions. "We all have history. Mine is woven into the fabric of this town. But it's that very history that continually shapes my resolve to do better. I wish to turn the whispers of doubt into a chorus of constructive dialogue." Silence engulfed the room. Emily could feel the weight of their collective consideration. Would they finally see her heart? It was an authentic unveiling, raw yet powerful, echoing her earlier conversations with Rachel about owning her narrative. "Trust isn't merely given, it's earned. And I believe by layering accountability into these initiatives, we can reclaim what it means to uplift each other," she concluded, determination gleaming like a shield wrapped around her. She awaited their responses, prepared for criticism, ready to engage in dialogue. Counting seconds felt like hours, but finally, the board's chairperson spoke. "Your proposals reflect considerable thought and heart, Emily," he said, his tone softer than she imagined. "What you're suggesting could indeed revitalize the town." But he hesitated, the hesitation laced with trepidation she already anticipated. "How do you respond to the criticisms that label you a mere heiress involved in superficial philanthropy?" Without faltering, she replied, "I'm grateful for such questions. The point is that my wealth can amplify collective voices rather than silence them. The discussions we choose to share will determine our success or failure." By standing firm, Emily felt lightness unfurl within her. One after another, board members raised their voices, examining, questioning, and redirecting. Each exchange proved to be a growing opportunity, shaping their collaboration into an active conversation rather than passive observation. Somewhere amidst vulnerability and action, trust ignited, purging reluctance into a shared expedition. In the subsequent weeks, a profound metamorphosis enveloped both Emily and Maplewood. The visitations from skeptical peers transformed into allies, workshops flourished, partnerships thrived, and the community's spirit rallied around the vision Emily had articulated. Recognizing competence blossomed in warm encounters, where and how she leveraged her narrative became entwined with that of the town. She was no longer Emily the heiress but Emily the change-maker. And with every accomplishment, the school district approaching her for partnerships, local businesses investing in her initiatives, even skeptics becoming advocates, the electric satisfaction of authentic impact settled deeply within her. In those moments of triumph, she acknowledged her past with increasing gratitude. Those painful experiences had carved her into the resolute woman who stood before them now. Her commitment was not just to elevate her standing but to elevate them all. Each conversation layered with respect affirmed her hard-earned victory over doubt. One evening, standing before a community committee celebrating the first round of their successful educational workshops, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The warmth from her peers reflected back at her, eyes twinkling with newfound trust, a testament to what had been achieved together. She recognized that by embracing vulnerability, fear had dissipated into unison. In her heart, she knew she had conquered both the inner and outer challenges. This transformative journey illuminated her path as the beacon she'd always wanted to be, a woman committed not only to her dreams but to the dreams of those around her. The shadows once cast by wealth had succumbed to purposeful light. Emily had achieved not just professional recognition, but personal fulfillment, an established position bridged with integrity. The story penned in her heart, intertwined with every session they held, would guide her further into the future. The legacy of genuine change she envisioned ignited her testimony. It redefined what success meant in Maplewood and beyond. This was the moment she had longed for, her hard-fought battle yielding a gratifying triumph, a life no longer tethered by inheritance but shaped through dedication, unwavering resolve, and a community shared in trust. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. We need your support. Comment with your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to show it. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.